Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into why our modern world sometimes feels, well, entirely too loud, and what neuroscience says we can actually do to find some balance. If you've ever felt completely drained by a super busy environment, let me tell you, you are absolutely not alone. And more importantly, it's not just in your head, it's literally in your biology.
So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the experience of overload, the brain's broken filter, the chemical imbalance behind it all, and finally, calming the storm. Let's jump right in.
Section 1. The experience of overload.
Have you ever felt physically assaulted by something as small as a ticking clock? For a lot of people out there, everyday stuff doesn't just feel mildly annoying. It feels like an overwhelming physical assault, a direct invasion of the senses. Just imagine sitting in an office, right? And the flickering of a fluorescent bulb above you doesn't just catch your eye. It literally makes you feel instantly nauseous. For adults dealing with sensory processing differences, this is an everyday reality.
If someone is dealing with sensory processing disorder, or SPD, common inputs can be just unbearable. We're talking about a coworker's strong perfume, the rough texture of a wool hat, or stepping into a crowded elevator. It's wildly distracting, and you can't just tell someone to get used to it. These triggers set off this massive cascading neurological response that can make everything, from just getting dressed in the morning to focusing on a big presentation at work, incredibly tough.
And get this, it's actually not as rare as you might think. Sensory reactivity differences affect between 5 and 15% of the general population. That is a lot of people. And within specific communities, those numbers skyrocket. It impacts up to 90% of autistic individuals and shows up all the time in folks with ADHD. We're talking about something that seriously impacts developmental outcomes, mental well-being, the whole shebang when it comes to quality of life.
Which brings us to Section 2, the brain's broken filter.
Usually, our brains rely on something called sensory gating. Think of it as a highly efficient, built-in neurological spam filter. It's exactly what lets you tune out the hum of your refrigerator, or, what's often called the cocktail party effect. It's that amazing superpower where you can focus on a single voice in a super crowded, noisy room while just completely ignoring all the other overlapping conversations. But when that automatic spam filter fails, the brain just gets completely, utterly overwhelmed. So let's trace exactly how this happens inside our heads. When that spam filter breaks down, the thalamus, which is basically the brain's central relay station, gets absolutely flooded with unfiltered data. That flood triggers the amygdala, our built-in threat detection center. The amygdala panics and releases stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, even when there's no actual danger around. And because of this massive physiological stress response, the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain handling reasoning, decision-making, and focus, becomes measurably impaired. You're not just distracted here. Your brain's cognitive processing is essentially hijacked.
Now, there's a really brilliant way we actually measure this broken filter in a clinical setting. It's called the P50 wave test. It works like this. A subject hears two identical clicks spaced just 500 milliseconds apart. A typical brain, it instantly realizes that second click is redundant and gates it out, dropping the neural response to it by like 80 to 90%. But a brain with impaired sensory gating, it processes that second click at full volume. It basically treats every single repetitive stimulus as brand new, urgent information.
Let's move to Section 3, the chemical imbalance.
At a microscopic level, whether that spam filter works or fails largely comes down to the EI balance. That stands for the excitation-inhibition balance. It's this super delicate, ongoing equilibrium between excitatory signals and inhibitory signals flying around your brain's networks. It's literally the micromanager of how you perceive the world.
Think of it as a literal, high-stakes, neural tug-of-war. Pulling on one side, we have glutamate. This is basically the gas pedal of the brain. It rapidly drives neural excitation and turns the volume way up on our sensory perception. And then, pulling on the other side, we have GABA, which acts as the brakes. GABA provides that slow, steady, neural inhibition we desperately need to calm the pathways and filter out all that redundant noise.
And here is where it all clicks together. When people experience sensory overresponsivity, neuroimaging studies often reveal a really distinct chemical signature. Their brains actually show reduced GABA concentrations or elevated glutamate in the sensoromotor cortex. To put it simply, the gas pedal is stuck all the way down and the brakes are completely failing. The brain's filter just doesn't have the chemical tools it needs to block out the noise.
All right, Section 4, calming the storm.
This brings us to some absolutely fascinating, cutting-edge research coming out of the University of Reading. The researchers there started asking a huge question. Could we directly target this chemical imbalance to provide a tangible, real-world solution for people suffering from sensory overload?
Their research zeroed in on vitamin B6. Now, at pharmacological doses, the active form of vitamin B6 acts as a crucial coenzyme for an enzyme called glutamate decarboxylase. This enzyme has a very specific and honestly amazing job. It literally converts the gas pedal, glutamate, directly into the brakes, GABA. So by increasing the availability of vitamin B6, the researchers hypothesized that they could speed up this reaction, essentially boosting the brain's inhibition and restoring that delicate balance.
So they put this to the test in a rigorous trial with 300 adults. And the results? Honestly, they were striking. They found that taking a high dose, 100 milligrams of vitamin B6, selectively reduced sensory overresponsivity in folks who started with high baseline scores. On the flip side, taking a placebo or even high-dose vitamin B12 had absolutely zero effect on those symptoms. It is a really compelling proof of concept for chemically shifting how the brain processes the world.
But of course, beyond popping targeted supplements, really mitigating sensory overload requires a holistic approach. We're talking about practical, everyday environmental modifications. Dimming those harsh lights or wearing noise-reducing headphones to just give the thalamus a break. It also involves mindfulness practices like deep breathing to actively calm down the amygdala's stress response. And increasingly, we're seeing some incredible emerging neurotechnology tools that are designed to monitor and optimize our own individual sensory processing.
Perhaps most importantly, we really need to reframe how we view recovery. Taking a break in a quiet room is not just a luxury or a comfort preference. Neurologically speaking, stepping away into a calm environment for just 10 to 15 minutes physically allows your cortisol and adrenaline levels to drop. It literally gives your overwhelmed prefrontal cortex the chance to recover its functional capacity, so you can actually make decisions and focus again. It's absolutely crucial.
I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. As our modern world continues to get louder, brighter, and way more chaotic, how are we going to intentionally redesign our workspaces, our public areas, and our science to accommodate and empower every single kind of brain? Thank you so much for exploring this with me today, and keep questioning how we can build a world that truly works for everyone.